friends. Welcome to Sky House Herbs podcast. I'm Ashley Elenbaas, a clinical herbalist, and in this space, I share my knowledge and experience with plant medicine to help you on your own journey of healing and transformation. Join me in exploring the ancient wisdom of plant spirit medicine and how it can be used to heal the body, mind, and spirit. We'll talk to experts in the field and share stories from people who've been transformed by powerful plant allies. New episodes are released each Monday, so please subscribe. And now, let's explore this mystical world of plant medicine together. Hey everyone, welcome in. Today I'm excited to share with you an herb that is bright and cheery, full of sunshine, and is a wonderful herb if you've been going through challenges in your health or like physiological stresses, if you've been going through emotional or mental distress. This herb is just a bringer of light. So I hope you enjoy learning more about this wonderful plant, how to grow it, how to use it, its historical uses, and also I will show you some from my garden. Before we do that, I would love if you could click the subscribe button. It really, really helps me. I think this week we're at 7.2 thousand followers. I'm trying to get to 10,000 by the end of this year. So if you subscribe, I thank you, as that helps more people find my work. It helps my channel move up so more people can learn about the wonderful and scientific as well as more folk uses of medicinal plants. So thank you in advance for your subscription, also for liking this video if you find it helpful. And always, I love your comments, so please feel free to let me know what you think and what other questions you might have about this herb or other plants. So let's dive in. The herb we're talking about today is calendula. And this is a little bit of an interesting thing. I want to tell you what is calendula and what's not, because this is an herb that sometimes gets confused with another herb that is in the same family, but is actually a very different medicine. So today we're talking about Calendula officinalis. Sometimes it's called marigold. And this is different from the Mexican marigold. So let me show you a picture of the marigold I'm speaking about. Calendula, as I call it in herbalism. It is a beautiful flowering, almost kind of daisy looking plant. It is in the daisy or Asteraceae family, and it has many, many petals, but you can see the center. I think that's a distinguishing feature. The Mexican marigold is a much more compact flower, and you see that a lot in different ceremonies. I know if you've ever seen the movie Coco, which is a Disney movie. As a mom, I've seen every Disney movie, but marigolds are what are used in a lot of transition and end of life celebrations. They're also used in India a lot to celebrate the grave and to make marigolds. Mexican marigolds are often used to make necklaces and garlands, but the Eastern, or maybe not Eastern, like European marigold, Calendula officinalis, is different. It smells different. The color is very similar. They range in colors from yellow to gold to an orangish, even a more reddy color. And that's true for the Mexican marigold, which is Tagetes erecta. So I'll put that in the cliff notes or in the description notes so that you can make sure when you're sourcing this that you get the right marigold. But the one that we're talking about today, Calendula officinalis, has a long history of use in European medicine, in Greek medicine, in Egyptian medicine, and in Indian medicine as well. And this particular herb was called pot marigold. And the reason for that, it was used in stews and soups because it creates this beautiful color. It's used as a dye. And it was also called poor man's saffron because saffron is an Indian herb, is very expensive and was used as a dye and a color agent for foods and desserts. And calendula is a lot less expensive, and it has a similar kind of golden hue that it can dye cloths or dye foods in. And Medicinally, it's been used as a lymphatic, which means it moves the lymph fluids through the body. We'll talk a little bit more about what that is and why and where. And it was also used as a topical agent for wounds, to help with infection, with fungal infections, antiviral. It's a wound healer, so it helps kind of stitch wounds back together. And so it was used in stews really to help increase heat in the body, circulation, lymphatic movement, especially after you've been sick. So in the very beginning of this video, I said, if you've been struggling with physical illness, mental, emotional illness, even spiritual illness, right? If there's been a chronic something that you've been working on and you're ready to bring in some light and help move the stagnation out, or just sort of clear the last remnants, especially if you've had like a cold or COVID, any sort of long-standing illness that just you feel kind of gunked up. And grief can do this too. So if you have lost someone, it's like grief, just it comes and goes. It's like these crazy waves. You think you're okay, and then all of a sudden you get hit by another wave, and you get to a point where you're like, I think I'm ready to just be at peace a little bit more, and not to be feeling so heavy and weighed down by the grief. Not that you forget the person or the animal that you're grieving, but that you're just ready to feel the sunshine come back a little brighter. And that's what this herb does. It's one of the phrases that can help you remember this herb is herbal sunshine. And that's a coined phrase from an herbalist from Minnesota. Minnesota herbalist Chris Hafner was first noted as coining the phrase herbal sunshine, and he was a colleague of Matthew Wood's. And so Matthew Wood heard him say, "Oh, herbal sunshine," and then Matthew wrote it in a lot of his books. And now a lot of people think Matthew came up with it. He just uses it a lot, just as I do, because it's a really helpful way, because it's this bright, golden, sunny looking plant. And so thinking of it as herbal sunshine is a great way to remember it, to think about its uses. So let's talk about some of the uses of calendula. Why is it herbal sunshine? What does that mean? So let's talk about the lymphatic system first, because that's a really helpful way of thinking about one of the things this herb does. So our body has a network of lymph nodes and lymph passages in the body. And so these run parallel to the circulatory system, to where blood flows. And our lymphatic system doesn't have a pump of its own. And so it relies on the blood flow and the bloodstream in order to carry the lymph fluids. And the lymph is responsible for breaking down, it's part of you can think of it as being part of our immune system. So it helps to not only bring, our circulatory system brings a lot of lymph cells, or brings a lot of blood cells like our T cells and our lymphocytes, to areas of injury. So let's just say, for example, I had a cut on my arm. Well, what's going to happen is our circulatory system is going to bring blood flow to that area. And with that blood comes a lot of our immune cells. And our lymph system is connected to our cardiovascular, or our circulatory system. So it's going to bring other lymph activating cells to that area too. But one of the main things that the lymphatic system does is it carries wastes away. So let's say I have this injury, blood flow has come, the area's gotten red, it's gotten hot, there's a lot of activity. I can see it's red and raised, and it's painful. So I know my immune system is there, and those cells are working hard at trying to clear that, any pathogens that may have entered, and start to heal the tissue that's gotten cut. But as a part of the process of our immune system activating and cleaning is that we have wastes. So then those get transported through the lymphatic system. And part of the way that it works is that the lymphatic ducts, they carry them to lymph nodes. And then the lymph nodes have even more immune system cells, which look at them and say, okay, is there any problem here? Nope. Okay, let's bring it on. And then eventually all of that is processed out through the kidneys and the bladder and out through the colon. Some of the lymph can be, we can sweat out some of those toxins, but mostly it's through our kidneys and our bowels. So that's how we're going to clear out the waste products from the immune reaction. So let's say our circulatory system is not working great. Let's just say we tend to run cold and we're not getting those good blood flow pumps. So then what can happen is we can have a weakened immune response. So that skin wound that when we were 10 would have healed up like this, well, now we're in our 70s. And as we age, circulatory function tends to go down a little bit, and lymphatic function can go down as a result, since they're connected, since like the lymphatics piggyback on the blood flow. So what can happen is we get that cut and it's taking like 3 weeks to heal. So one thing we can do to help is, once we've had that inflammatory response, things have gotten cleaned up. If you start to notice after you've had an injury, maybe under your armpits are a little sore, maybe in your groin is a little sore, that's where all of our lymph nodes are. This can also happen after we've had a sickness like COVID, cold, flu, right? Anything like that, respiratory infection. We can just sort of feel maybe in our armpits, maybe around the breast tissue, maybe in the groin, just a little, and under the throat here, a little bit more tenderness. And that's usually a result of stagnation in the lymph nodes. So what we can do is we can take an herb like calendula to increase the flow of lymph and also increase sort of reflexively the flow of blood. So it kind of works on in the opposite way. And it really helps the lymph drain, thin, and be able to be cleared then through the systems of elimination, which is excellent. I mean, how many times have you had a cold where you're like, I just wish this thing would go away? Well, if you use something like herbal sunshine, it heats up that whole the activity of the lymph system and the circulatory system, so you can clear it out. Same thing is true for emotional grief. The same thing is true for psychological stress. So we can think about bring in the sunshine. Here is some marigold from my garden. It's really easy to grow. I'll talk maybe a little bit more about that at the end, but it's this bright, sticky, resinous plant that goes in and clears lymph. Another way to think about herbal sunshine is that it works where the sun don't shine. And I love that. That's something that Matthew Wood taught me. And I'll include a link to one of his books, the Book of Herbal Wisdom, which is a great reference book and great place to start if you're just getting interested in herbal medicine. It walks you through energetics, systems, how to think about herbs, and then lots of stories and clinical applications for individual herbs, which I love learning about them in that way, which is why I do the herb of the month. Because like if you really can get to know one plant well, then you are going to be much better off than knowing a ton of plants, but very little, right? Because each plant has so many different uses, like calendula. So we can use calendula for the places where the sun don't shine. And I think about diaper rash as being a prime example. This is one of probably my favorite herbs for use in a salve or in an oil for the skin. So for babies who get diaper rash, it's like a damp, hot rash. You can use calendula, which can soothe, it can cool, and then it can help move and help the skin heal more quickly. It's another great herb for if you have any sort of heat rashes, especially like in the armpits, again, any place where it's shadowed under where the lymph nodes are. Basically, the lymph nodes are on all the sort of shadowed places in the body, behind the knees, in the crease of the elbow, we've got lymph nodes. So we can think about, and under the breasts as well. So we can think about any of the place that's shadowed. If the sun is directly overhead, we can use calendula for those areas. Calendula is also really good for any sort of skin issue where you've got heat. So if you can think about if you've got a cut or a scrape, hives, things like that, where the skin is really red and irritated, using it as a salve is a really wonderful way to use this herb topically. Salves are really easy to make. You can look at recipes. Hilda, come here. Do you hear that sound? That's the sound of my dog's tail. She's 125 pounds and her tail is like, it's like a bat that whips around. Anyway, so you can use calendula flowers and you have to use them dried, because when they're fresh, they're so Well, that you just can't extract the medicines as well because the water gets in the way of extraction. So here's what I do. Here, I'll tell you about how I grow them and how I use them. So calendula, like it's a plant of the sun. In Culpeper's medicine, he was an herbal medical astrologer from like the 1650s. He talks about it being under the rulership. So if you study astrology, he talks about it being under the rulership of the sun and Leo. And so this herb, it really likes to grow in sun. It has these bright sunshine looking flowers. It opens and closes with the sun, which is really fun to watch in the morning. If you go out really early, it's still asleep. And then as the sun comes up and warms the plant, it opens up its flowers. And then as the dusk comes in and night falls, it'll close its flowers up. But what you want to do is you want to grow it in sun to partial sun. It doesn't have to be full sun. I don't have full sun, but I have enough sun to where it's very happy. And then you want to harvest it when it's like mostly open. Don't wait till it retroflexes and it starts to get a little bit kind of dried on the edges. When it's really at its prime, pick it and then just lay it flat to dry on a dry surface. And it'll curl up like this. And it should have this bright yellow color. Let me show you. This is a bag that I ordered from an herbalist on Etsy called Goddess 11 Holistics. And whenever you order calendula, it should be bright, bright yellow or orange. If you order it and it's a pale yellow, almost like a brownish color, I don't, like something like maybe this color on my mug, send it back because it's old. And I've unfortunately bought large quantities. I've had problems with mountain rose herbs. I love their herbs, but their calendula, I've had to send back several times because it's been old. And another way you can tell if it's fresh is if it's kind of sticky. So when it dries, it still stays a little soft because it has all of these sticky resins in it. And when you pick it fresh, those resins stick to your fingers. And Margie Flint, an herbalist from Marblehead, Massachusetts, says that's one of the indications of how it stitches the skin together. And part of how it does it is with these healing resins like we find in frankincense and myrrh and pine sap that are very antimicrobial, antibacterial, and stitch together the skin. So that's really neat to know. And then you just let them dry until they get kind of sticky like this. And then you can put them I like to put mine in jars with a cloth lid. So that's how you can store them. And then to use them, you can throw about this many, this is about 4 flowers, in about 1.5 cups of hot water, boil it. No, don't boil it. Boil the water, then pour it in, let it sit for maybe like 10, 15 minutes, and then strain and drink. Do that 3 times a day if you're really trying to clear your lymphatic system. If you're using it more for emotional support, twice a day should be fine. And you could even make one big batch of like 8 flowers and 2 cups or 2.5 cups of water and just sip that throughout the day. It can be really cheerful. And it does have a bitter taste to it because of a lot of these bitter resins. So if you want to add some honey, there's no big problem, like it's not going to take away from the medicine. So you can add a little bit of honey just to sweeten and brighten it up. It also works really nicely with chamomile. Chamomile and calendula flowers can blend really nicely and create sort of a mellow flavor. And chamomile works as a gentle relaxant and nervine. And then calendula brings in that warming, circulatory, lymphatic activity that really brings the sunshine in. And the chamomile kind of calms the nervous system. So if you tend to be kind of anxious, if grief has sort of stimulated your sympathetic nervous system and you're having maybe a little more fear and more anxiety, blending it with chamomile for that emotional component is going to be really nice. Also, making it as an oil is very simple. I believe I have a video on how to make an infused oil, so you can watch that. But basically what you do is you take your dried flowers, you stuff them into a jar, fill the jar maybe 3/4 with the dried flowers, pour an oil over the top, mix it, and then put that in a warm water bath. I like to use a crock pot on the warm setting, not on low, but on warm, and let that sit maybe 48 to 72 hours. And you want the temperature of the oil to be around maybe 120 to 140 degrees, just for a long period of time. You can also, if you don't have a crock pot, you can do a double boiler and submerge it in water and just keep an eye on it. Make sure it doesn't get too hot, or your jar could crack or the oil could go bad. It's very rare that it will happen, but can. And then you just strain out the flowers. And I like to use it as a body oil in the winter. Calendula has also been used for seasonal affective disorder. So if you tend to get kind of depressive in the winter time, you can use this as a body oil to keep your body warm. And again, just to bring in that idea of sunshine, of herbal sunshine in your body and on your body throughout the winter. There are a few more things I wanted to share with you about this herb. Some of the actions, which I think, this is like when I said, if you can just learn a few plants really well. I know a lot of herbalists that just use a handful of plants, a lot, but they know all of the different ways to use this herb. So let me tell you some of them. So this is from Braun and Cohen, Herbs and Natural Supplements and Evidence-Based Guide, 4th edition. I'll include a link. This is a very science-based textbook for herbal medicine. So it lists the actions as anti-inflammatory, digestive aid, diaphoretic, which means it opens the pores and helps the body release heat, antimicrobial, vulnerary, which means it heals wounds, antidepressant, emmenagogue, so it can stimulate the uterus. So you don't want to use this in pregnancy, but you can use it if you want to help bring the menses on. If you tend to have maybe more sluggish or longer cycles and you want to increase more activity and blood flow into the uterus. It's anti-parasitic, antifungal. It's an immune modulator. We talked about that with the lymphatic activity. Antioxidant, antispasmodic, which means it can be good for cramps. Hypoglycemic, so it can help regulate blood sugar. It's hypolipidemic, so it can help regulate lipids or cholesterol. And it's hepatoprotective, so it supports and protects the liver health. It also can be used externally for psoriasis, wounds, scars, burns, gingivitis as a mouth rinse, and diaper rash. So many different uses. In one study, they used a 70% hydroalcoholic extract, which is basically hydro is water and alcoholic is alcohol, so tincture essentially, demonstrated virucidal activity against influenza virus and suppressed the growth of herpes simplex virus, has been shown to possess anti-HIV and anti-Epstein-Barr virus activity in vitro. So that's in Petri dishes. But again, lots of antiviral activity in this herb, lots of antibacterial energy in it as well. So we can really, this herb does, again, it does so much for us internally, externally. I wanted to also mention that for those of you that are familiar with the tissue states or who work with plants energetically, this is really good for the melancholic type or those who have a more depressive type of personality. So if they tend to run cold and stagnant, that's how I love to use this herb in formulas in my clinical practice, is in that way for cold, damp, stagnant, depressive types. I also really like to use it for bites and stings. You can just in the garden chew it up fresh, apply it as a poultice to bites, stings, or wounds. Instantly, you'll start to notice that it'll start to clear whatever was bitten into the person's body. As a flower essence, Anne McIntyre, who wrote this wonderful book, Flower Power, which is a wonderful book we use in our herbal apprenticeship course that I teach once a year. I'll include a link for that as well if you want to study with me, because that's a really great way to learn about plants like calendula. But in her book, Flower Power, she says that the flower essence of calendula is connected to the womb, our beginnings, and our creative spark. It is used specifically for people who lack warmth and receptivity in their communication with others. They tend to use sharp and cutting words, where spoken word may lead quite regularly to argument or misunderstanding. Calendula is said to help such people listen compassionately to others, to understand their message clearly, and to express warmth and caring in return. So as a communication herb, just shining the light, warming their heart. Leo is such a heart a sign that's associated with the heart. So if we think about bringing warmth, compassion, understanding, greater capacity for empathy, that's part of what the heart and the sun do together, is understanding, purpose, and empathy. So bringing all of that together, this herb is just really, really good for using it. So if you're pregnant, or you don't want to take this herb on a medicinal level, the flower essence might be a really nice way to work with it as well. I think that might be all that I wanted to share with you. I guess one last thing that I'll say is that in Ayurveda, calendula is used to work with upana vayu, which is the downward moving energy in the body. So we can think about this herb as really helping cleanse and ground and move energy downward and outward. So it moves blood, it moves stagnation, it moves the lymph, which we want to ultimately clear out down through the bowels and the kidneys downward. So if you are thinking about especially things that are here, here, and here, moving them downward and outward, this is a really good herb for that in the Ayurvedic tradition. Also, Culpeper and Gerard, European herbalists, referred to marigold as the comforter of the heart and spirits, was thought to be an aid in melancholy and grief. So just another plug for its use there. So lots of medicinal uses, lots of emotional uses. And, in this moon cycle, in one of the courses I teach called Roots and Spheres, where we pair one herb to the planetary transits of a moon cycle, we're using this herb right now to help clear a lot of heaviness and a lot of Pluto energy, and a lot of heavy energy from some of the Uranus, and just a lot of processing from eclipse season, moving that energy, just trying to help our bodies and our minds and our spirits process and let go of that, so that as we move into the late summer and the autumn, and some new energies that are coming in, that we have space, that we are clearing space for something new. And that's, I think, one of the great uses of this herb as well. So that was a nice long one for you. I think I covered everything. I didn't cover dose. So I talked about using it as a tea. But if you're going to use it as a tincture, which is a good way to use it as well, I would recommend, if you're using it therapeutically for cleansing and clearing, I would do 1 to 1.5 droppers full 3 times a day. That should be plenty. If you want to use it more on an energetic dose, 3 drops of the tincture on the tongue is a nice use. You can do 3 drops of flower essence as well. And then topically, you can just apply it as needed. I usually, for cuts and wounds and rashes, will apply at least maybe 3 to 5 times a day, because you really want to get it in there. Margie Flint also talks about using a salve of calendula to help with scars. So even if you have an old scar, you can use calendula and really massage it into the scar, and you can just gently start to stretch the tissue out. So you want to kind of move in the direction of the scar and then kind of move outward, and you can massage it in that way to help remove and bring that healing energy, the vulnerary wound healing energy of the plant into the scar tissue to start to break it up. And it's had great results doing that for many, many people. So with that, have a sunshiny day with the spirit of calendula. May it be with you. And I'll see you all again soon. Bye, everyone.